We are in the stretch run of the NFL season, but today's main topic of discussion is going to be baseball as Juan Soto signs a record-breaking contract with the Mets on this episode of the Scho-Zone. All right, everybody, welcome to the Scho-Zone. I am your host, Ryan Schofield, coming at you live from the DeGen. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Like, subscribe, comment, share, all of that douchebag stuff that podcasts like my hosts say, podcast hosts like myself say. Had a couple cups of coffee this morning. Going to have another one while we do this. Coming right at you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. This little house clearing business of my own. We're up to 202 subscribers, which means we've got plenty of room to go. I set the goal at 500 for the year, and I am not going to fucking go without a fight, at least. Let's at least get halfway there, 250. So come on, just tell a friend, like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. You can start talking shit to me because that's what most people like to do on these forums on here. I've recently taken my talents, quote, legend quote, fuck you, LeBron, taken my talents to TikTok, where it's amazing how much time people have to go out of their way to tell somebody they hate them or they disagree with them. Me, I tend to just kind of move along, but I have started maturing at my ripe old age, as I will be fucking 40 years old in May, which is a whole crisis I'm dealing with right now. But everybody, I led off the show with a little intro on there. And right last night, I think I wanted to say during the middle of the Chiefs and the Chargers game was when I got the ESPN notification, which most times I can do without any of those ESPN notifications. But then it finally hits. Juan Soto signs a $15,765 million deal in New York, but not with the Yankees, with the Mets. As I say, I'm sitting here. I have a Cardinals themed background. I'm wearing a St. Louis Cardinals hoodie. It doesn't really matter to me. I'm at that point, as I was saying to some friends I have a group chat with, they're irate Yankee fans. I keep thinking of one of my favorite movies of all time, Dirty Work. They're absolutely crazy over this. And I think of the scene when they're trying to go into Travis Cole's place. They can't get in, so they go outside. There's the homeless guys waiting there. And right now, the Yankees fans, the analogy I'm going to make, they talk to the homeless guys. They say they'll give them $2 if they run inside the building and cause a commotion. And the one guy says, what you're looking for is more of your psychotic, out-of-control homeless guys. Those are the Yankees right now. The Cardinals are what the other guy says is that we're more of your broken, spiritless, I've lost the will to live type fans. That's how it feels being a St. Louis Cardinals fan, but it's relaxing right now. I kind of don't have to care about being let down for the next 2 to 3 years is what I'm giving them right now. It's refreshing. What's going to have to start happening is that people that are my age that are Yankee fans may have to start accepting the fact they have not had to deal with, they kind of have had to deal with a lot of losing. I mean, they win a lot of regular season games, but as far as winning championships has not happened, and it's going on 15 years now, which, for some fan bases, that's not a big deal, but for a team like fans like the Yankees, that's a huge deal. That's a decade and a half of not winning a World Series. Someone just already unfollowed up because of this one. Sure, that's fine. Leave a nasty comment first, all right? Engage at me. Let me know what you think. But they may have to accept this a little bit more because that's not just the guy not signing with you. It's just also, this is my thoughts on this one. The first thing everyone's going to go for is that he doesn't deserve that much money. That's always up for debate. I don't think that we can say a guy doesn't deserve that much money when people were offering that amount of money to him. The Yankees offered the same amount of money, allegedly. Jay just wanted to do it over 16 years and not for 15. And I'll be fucking shocked if Juan Soto is even playing baseball for 15 years. He's 26 years old right now, I believe. If he's playing beyond 40, it's not going to be in that kind of role. And here's the thing about baseball. Now, if an NFL team makes a shitty contract signing, there's a reason to really care as a fan, or if they pay too much money for somebody, there's a reason to care. There's a salary cap. It impedes your ability outside of things. The Yankees seem to be on this self-made salary cap where they don't want to spend money like they did. George's kids are not following in dad's footsteps. George Steinbrenner, there's no way that he would have ever let Juan Soto sign with anybody else. He would have just constantly matched him on there. Kids are a little different. It happens, some kids, I just think of in my own life, sometimes kids sell the family business. They're still running the family business, but they're doing it a different way, which Yankees fans are just not used to. But I think that, all things being equal is that people, again, the Yankees are the king of New York. The Mets are the little brother. But I think that maybe, or this is, I can't speculate what Juan Soto was actually thinking. My outside observation was always going into this season, I don't think the Mets really intended to compete at the level that they did. I think they just kind of happened to fall into it. It seemed like for me, from the word go for the Mets, the way that the offseason went last year was to clear the books, get rid of Verlander and Scherzer, and then have that money available to then make the signing of Juan Soto in the offseason. And everything kind of fell to fruition with that one. Now, the Yankees had a wonderful run this year with Juan Soto as one of their focal points of the team. He was probably one of the top 5 players in the AL. He just happened to play on the same team as the best player in the AL. But the Yankees did not demonstrate that they were going to, I think that what would have happened is that if the Yankees signed Soto, that was going to be it for the signing, the way that they've run business the past couple of years. Whereas the Mets, this is now, you don't just sign Juan Soto and then call it a day. This is now the move that makes you have to make those other moves to make it all worthwhile. The Dodgers have set the precedent in Major League Baseball where, as much as I don't agree with it, because the way that baseball works is that, yes, this is going to get you a good team for 162 games. But what happens in the playoffs is all just random chance. I mean, I'm still willing to believe if the Yankees did not play the worst defensive inning of baseball possibly ever, I mean, that's probably a little bit of hyperbole. But if the Yankees had won Game 5 and it had gone to Game 6 and 7, I think that they would have possibly made life very, very, just making it to Game 6 would have made things interesting, but I was not ruling out them making that comeback, basically, if they had won that Game 5 and put it back in LA, but that did not happen. Again, a little bit jazzed up, I should probably do a little more preparation with the live streaming on there, but hey, this is amateur podcasting at its finest. I'm just trying to put some things out there, make some things happen at the end of 2024 so I can start off 2025 fine, because, well, this is just not the easiest thing to do all the time. I canceled the live blackjack stream for today because, I think I've just learned I've been getting my teeth kicked in playing blackjack. I had a good run there for a little bit. So now I'm back to doing this. But anyways, back to the Juan Soto thing. So I think that this is the beginning of the Mets making some moves there, and this is what you have to do. I mean, as crazy as it is, because they lost the way that they lost in Game 6, but the Mets were in the NLCS last year and lost to the inevitable World Series champion. A guy like Juan Soto does make that much of a difference, okay? Especially when you start looking how the lineup is going to change. I mean, one thing that's going to come out there is that I saw someone posting was about, he was hitting in front of Aaron Judge last year. Yeah, that's, one of the 2 or 3 best hitters in baseball he was hitting in front of last year. But then people wanted to say it was such a negative thing that he was going to be now hitting in front of Mark Vientos. Well, Mark Vientos is not exactly Aaron Judge. Mark Vientos, as if you look from the second half of the year last year, was one of the best power hitters in baseball. I believe he had a barrel rate of like 15%. And not that I love to use all of those deep dive numbers, but barrel rate basically means I'm hitting the ball square on the fucking nuts. And usually when you do that, good things happen. Now, if you're hitting it right at people, that sucks. But, usually when you're hitting it hard, you're going to hit it where people are not. Kyle, wow, I'm usually really good at names. Semenowitz, I think that's your name there. You saw my TikTok about betting on our field team to win by 1 to 6 points. What are you doing tonight's game? I'm going to do the exact same thing. Now, granted, the odds are not as favorable for betting the Bengals on this one, but the Bengals are just a great fantasy football team is the way I look at it. And unfortunately, they have Zach Taylor as their head coach. The Bengals are clearly the more talented team with the offensive firepower that they have. But when their defense is as awful as it is, and there is a guy like CeeDee Lamb on the other side, make it to 1 to 6 points again. All NFL games are a little wonky. It seems so easy to be true to just bet the Bengals to win this game. But, say they're up by 13, 14 points there. The Cowboys get that backdoor touchdown. Again, I don't know if McCarthy is actually one of the analytics guys that'll go for 2 down 14, but that kind of shit matters. But as I just kind of say, it just makes it for, rather than having to root for a team you normally don't care about or stress over everything, just fucking root for a good football game, a close back and forth game, and then you have fun. Like last night, I did have a little bit of a moment with the where the Chiefs were up 13-0 at halftime, where I was like, boy, I don't know if the Chargers are even going to fucking score today. But then once they got that one touchdown on there, and I realized that the Chiefs really seemed like scoring touchdowns is something that they're allergic to these days, it just became a great game. Just go back and forth on there. And yeah, I would have won more money if the Chargers had won. But the Chiefs ended up coming out there, and I still walked away with a slight winner on that one. Do I put the same amount on each team? Typically, yes. On a game like today, maybe just have the same amount that you're going to put on each game and kind of stagger them out of there. Like one game that I did not put the same amount on each team yesterday, or there was a couple games actually. I try not to outsmart the system is what I say. Let's not get cute. Let's not turn a winning proposition into a losing proposition. But yesterday, for example, when the Carolina Panthers are 14-point underdogs, they were plus 900 to win the game by 1 to 6 points. I just put a half unit on that one. But what's nice about that game is that the Eagles, because they were such big favorites, I was getting plus 400 on them to win the game by 1 to 6 points. So I had a pretty good little net on that game. I don't necessarily advocate parlaying money lines. It just seems to be a dead end thing there. But as I posted onto my Twitter, which again, if you're following along on the bottom here, my social media is on there. I'm basically Scho525 or the Scho-Zone, and just about everything. Like, subscribe, comment, share, all that douchebag stuff that podcast hosts like myself say. I did really like, as I looked at it, I looked at the Vikings, the Steelers, and the Dolphins. And I said, which one of these three teams is going to fuck me was the way I looked at it on. I looked at all three of those teams as being pretty there's no such thing as an easy bet. If there was an easy bet, I would bet everything I had on it. That's the way that I'm wired. And I plan on doing an episode discussing gambling as a profession, hobby versus gambling as an addiction at some point in time. And I'll get into more stuff with that at some point in the future. Now that I have some free time, maybe I'll record that episode and then just leave it in the can for a time when I don't have as much time. But what I did on those is, again, I put half a unit on the team that I did not think had a chance of winning and then put the money that I did. Now, that one kind of worked out a little bit because the Steelers and the Vikings both won by margin. So I lost everything I lost on those games, which made it really, really good with that Jets and the Dolphins game was that going into overtime when you can only win by 6 points maximum, it made it that no matter what, I was going to walk away a winner. And then the Jets went down there and did the right thing, or the Dolphins went down there and did the right thing and scored the touchdown and won the parlay that I had placed. And then also didn't lose as much with the Jets on there. So that's the way I would do that. I mean, most games, though, like a game like tonight, when the spreads are 6 or less or tight, maybe stagger the units a little bit. We'll just say, for example, if you're doing $50 a game, $25 a side, maybe you put 30 on the Bengals and 20 on the Cowboys. And, don't just, it's one of those things when you're using a season-long system like I'm using, you might lose one game. You're going to have a week. There's probably going to be one more week left in the NFL season that this is going to blow up completely in my face. But for the year now, the math behind all of this, there's been 212 NFL games and 99 of them have been decided by 6 points or less. The typical, if you study these the way that I have been, most games you're probably getting, if you have a pick'em game, usually the 1 to 6 margin for both teams is set at plus 300, which means that if you're betting equal on both sides, you've now knocked that down to being plus 150. You're cutting it half. So if I've got two $25 bets, one of them pays me 75, and then I got another $25 bet that pays me 75. I now effectively have a $50 bet to win 75. Joe, thank you very much for joining me. I am quite the whore. Sorry about the Packers, buddy. Sorry about the Packers. I couldn't find, and then that what made me sad yesterday. Yesterday was my father's 66th birthday. Would have been his 66th birthday. I could not find his Packers sweatshirt. It's around here somewhere, but the more I organize and clean things up, the harder it is to find things. But thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Maybe tell you got family members, Joe. Tell them that they need to subscribe to me, and then they can just ignore me like everybody else does. But hey, those subscriptions, they're like the tip jar. If you see a tip jar and there's no money in it, you don't feel obligated to donate anything to it. If you see a tip jar that's got a bunch of money in it, you kind of feel like, shit, I got to do what everyone else is doing. So as we slowly build up the subscriptions, we will slowly, hopefully keep, attracting more faces. I think it helps the algorithms. I don't know who sees this, or I know that my click-through rate is not the greatest. I'm still teaching myself how to do all this stuff. I really need to learn how to make a decent thumbnail every now and again, but back to the sports talk on here. Enough of the Scho-Zone, but hey, that's all part of the experience when you're in here, especially when you got a guy who does not read from a cue card or does not read from a script. He just lets it rip. I do not mean to talk about any of my friends that necessarily, if you're a friend of mine and you're watching this, there's a good chance it's probably about you, but there a lot of you are very similar. That's why I'm friends with you. I do have some different friends here and there, but I will say that a lot of the Yankee fans have just really just kind of shown like, it's again, like I said, the Yankees are spoiled. It's because I can't read. Yeah, that's funny. Yankees fans are just spoiled. I mean, they had too much too fast kind of thing. If you are my age, 39 years old, or in that wheelhouse there, The Yankees won quite a few World Series titles, and it's great to assume your team is always going to win. It's never a bad thing to do that, but it's a bad reality, and it sets yourself up for failure. I love that the Cardinals have always, like, all I ask of a baseball team is just keep me interested until football season. That was back when I really, really cared about the NFL. Now I really would like a baseball team to keep me interested as long as possible, because the NFL just doesn't do it for me anymore. And I have some thoughts and theories on that I'll get into. In fact, I need to write that one down right now because I want that to be a note. Teams get better as season goes on. Okay. But I had a few people, and someone just actually proved my point. I posted a TikTok just kind of saying that, all these teams, it's okay to be upset, but when you have shitty logic, that's when I'm just going to jump down there. Saying that Juan Soto was not worth that much money when your team offered him the same dollar figure and wanted him to play baseball for an extra year. And when you want to say good luck paying him the money that you're going to be paying him towards the tail end of that contract, when you were just going to be paying him like $2 million less. Like, here's the thing. Every baseball team has the money to spend to sign a guy to a contract like that. It's just that they might not make as much money that year is the issue. And you also, when you buy that kind of thing, it's like you would not buy a Maserati and then throw hubcaps on it. You got to throw rims on it to complete the look is kind of the analogy that I would make for that one. So the Mets have to continue to spend more money or else this is all for naught. Or it is just hilarious to kind of give a big fuck you to the to Yankees fans, which I saw as another comment that said, someone made the joke that, Soto didn't want to deal with the Yankees fans. And that, the Mets are just, the Mets fans are better. And someone said, you really think that Mets fans are better? I'll say that as somebody who lives in upstate New York, I mean, the Mets fans are more tolerable. Mets fans have accepted their fate a little bit, for the most part. And I would say this is a good generalization amongst New York sports fans. It seems to be that you're a Yankees or a Giants fan, and then you're a Mets and a Jets fan. There's obviously a little bit of cross, contamination, I guess we'll call it in that one, for lack of a better term to think of on the fly. But for the most part, the camps seem to be aligned that way. The Giants and the Yankees have won in our lifetimes. The Mets and the Jets have not, and they've just broken their fan base's hearts in the process on there. I will always say that I find that the baseball season is so much better. The way that I used to phrase it when the Cardinals were good, it was when Mets fans think that they can win. Now that the Cardinals winning is way out of the equation for them, baseball is just better when the Mets can win. They're just such a much more. They're not obnoxious. Jets fans can be obnoxious, but Mets fans, they expect the worst thing to possibly happen. It's just wired into them. So them getting Juan Soto, I mean, right now, most Mets fans, they're not as excited as the level of excitement amongst Mets fans is nowhere near the level of disappointment and anger that Yankees fans have, because they're expecting Juan Soto to get injured sometime soon. They're expecting him to gain 30 pounds. They're expecting him to stop caring about baseball. All of those scenarios are the things that Mets, fans say. Kyle, thank you for joining me on that one. Yeah, of course. I just proved my point on there. Are you a New York guy, Kyle? Don't be afraid to comment back on that one. But yeah, no, I got to stop saying. I had this little thing I was doing when I wasn't recording live where anytime I use these ums and buts, I would smack myself. I got really, really tired of doing that. And I think people got tired of watching it. Also, don't mind the company that I works for's logo in the shot there. I'm not trying to give them any additional business, although I would like to give myself some additional business. So if you happen to recognize that logo and you're in the market for some new stuff, I can ship it up and down the Eastern Seaboard for you and make a couple bucks off of that one, which just helps. I spend my commission better than the other guy spends their commission is the way I go. Got a nice new girlfriend here. Now, if I want to go to baseball games, I apparently have to pay for 2 tickets and, all that stuff, which is, it's a labor of love. It's a labor of love. I don't mind doing it. It's just, it's going to impede the ability, the freedom that I had. But, you trade some of those things off for some other positive things. It's a net positive, I would say. She's lovely. So Long Islander, geez, that's a tough, you have a tough life. If you grew up in Long Island as a Mets and a Jets fan, I would probably say, but I know many of people like you, and I'm not saying that as a negative thing. I just know that, you probably at some point drank a lot of alcohol and probably did a lot of cocaine is basically the best I can assume out of that one. Don't mean that to be a personal attack, just my experience with Mets, Jets fans from Long Island. To be honest with you, that's a lot of people from Long Island though, but specifically the Mets, Jets fans, a lot of cocaine, a lot of alcohol, a lot of fighting. So anyways, Ultimately, I think that, it's ultimately good that we're talking about. I'd rather be talking about the Juan Soto thing than the golden at bat rule, which all of a sudden Manfred kind of said, "Hey, don't worry about it. It's not happening for a while." I truly believe that he had to have, at least is what I told myself. It's what I told myself. People that get to prominent positions in life, they don't do it by always being wrong. Sometimes they're just a little smarter than we want to let on. Maybe Adam Silver in the NBA is a bad example for that one. But I think that, the fact that we were talking as much about baseball, because baseball likes to stay relevant as long as they possibly can. It's not a bad business idea. When they announced their postseason, now granted, there was no real drama for the regular season awards, but they intentionally announced them well after the season to kind of try and stay in the news cycle for a little bit longer. It didn't really work out for them this year because all of the awards were pretty much decided like in July, I want to say. But, them having that little headline out there did make things a little more interesting as far as people were talking about baseball. And as people would say, there's no such thing as bad publicity. It's just publicity. The fact that we were talking about baseball in December, and, the NFL is just kind of, they're looking for reasons. I mean, if the NBA was actually halfway watchable right now, I'm curious what the conversations about the NFL will be, or maybe because I'm just detached from the real reality, or not the real reality, but the conventional reality of things, of that I just don't care as much about the NFL season. I will say, though, the quality of play is slowly improving, and that's where I want to segue into the NFL right now. The bad teams in the NFL are suddenly not as bad. You can kind of see this where, I mean, I'm looking at you, the Carolina Panthers. They're not an easy out now. Now, they're not good enough to win these games, but they are good enough to be competitive in these games. It's almost as if that if by playing football, these guys get better at playing football. It's a wild, wild concept. I know that because since we've limited the OTAs and we've limited the off-season training, all these things that we used to happen, like, football was a round the clock, around the calendar kind of thing, and everyone played hard all the time, practiced hard in pads and all that good stuff. It's almost as if that when people were doing that, we were getting a better product out there. At the beginning of the season, the gap between the haves and the have-nots seemed endless. Now it's kind of shrunken down a little bit, except for the New York Giants, who are just absolutely the worst team in the NFL. Now, whether or not they were trying to lose that game intentionally yesterday, I did not watch any of it. I just kind of saw the little highlight clips at the end of it. So that's all I'm going to give the Giants and the Saints, okay? I actually did business with a guy on Saturday night who was a Giants season ticket holder that said he was going to the Giants game the next day. And I was kind of looking at him like, what? And he was just like, oh, my kid wants to go. And I'm like, you're an amazing dad. You really love your kid if you're willing to drive from Albany, New York, down to New Jersey for a Giants Saints game in shitty weather and then have to drive back all on the same day. Father of the Year award. Just hopefully the kid grows up not hating you for making him a Giants fan. That's just the only thing I can hope out of that one. But the Giants, they're a next level of bad. But also, this is, when it happens when you don't have a quarterback in the NFL, and not whether or not they're trying to win. I just think the Giants have always, from the word go, have been building their team horribly. They drafted a running back, a quarterback, and a wide receiver instead of an offensive line. I think that the way to build an NFL team is from the outside in. Yes, it is all for nothing if you don't have a quarterback, but if your quarterback has no line, unless they are really, really a stud, it's just never going to work out. So, no, I think that, the games are getting a little more competitive, and that's also been reflective in the 1-6 thing I was talking about that Kyle commented on. Again, you can follow me on TikTok. I try not to overwhelm my friends. I mean, I have the same people on Facebook and on Twitter that have been there forever. I'm not really picking up new followers. In fact, on Twitter, I'm actually starting to lose followers. I don't know if maybe because I've become more vocal about certain things that aren't as popular, politics, or if it's been that just maybe they're draining the swamp of Twitter because, I always get these random bot accounts. Some really, really attractive girl today said that I should add her or follow her so we can chat more directly. I'm sure that that's legitimate. Maybe some of those are kind of falling away. We got to stop with the ums and the buts. I do my best, but again, amateur, and I'm losing people by the moment here. But thank you for the people that are following on here. I can't see if anybody's subscribing, but again, please do like, comment, share, all that stuff that douchebag podcast hosts like myself say. I will say before I go full out into the NFL, I did have the most flattering compliments. Again, one of the only shows I watch, or my primary show that I watch for information now, is the Coach JB show with Big Smitty, just because they are their own entity. They can say what they want. And more importantly, they have guests that have better insight that also do not have to worry about ruffling any feathers with the things they say. I'll listen to former NFL players that are not penalized for having original thoughts on mainstream corporate media a little bit more than I'll listen to the people that never played football or that just watch as much football as I watch sometimes, which is kind of not as much as I probably should for someone that talks about it. But at least I'm able to gather some good insight through them. I was on there because I was going on about saying that Josh Allen deserves to be MVP, and the odds are reflecting that for me again. Don't ever bet MVP early in the season. Josh Allen was the favorite after like week 3 or something like that, and then he took a loss to the Lions, fell off a cliff on the odds. I picked up on him. Now he is a minus 450 favorite. It's amazing when a guy can actually improve his MVP odds in a loss, but when you have 3 passing touchdowns and 3 rushing touchdowns, you don't turn the ball over and your team loses, it's not your fault. You got them in a game. I mean, they were down 17 points, and it was just like, okay, he's going to score right now. I mean, that's just the level of which Josh Allen is playing at. Absolutely deserves the MVP, but, we'll remains to be seen. Again, like Jared Goff, I mean, he plays for a one-loss team. I mean, it's kind of hilarious that, it used to just be the quarterback on the best team. Jared Goff and Patrick Mahomes are disproving that, and they're showing that football is actually a team sport in many cases. Jared Goff has 2 running backs, as I was telling somebody the other day. David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs are 4th and 11th in rushing and receiving combined yards, and they play on the same team. So it's not as much about him as it is those guys. They're the kind of propelling him along. I mean, Mahomes, he still is dangerous. He is a guy that I guess he's kind of almost like Dirk Nowitzki when he was on the 2011 Mavs team, is just get him into a position where he can close the game out, and Mahomes will do that. That's about the only compliment I can give to him this year. For the most part, the dink and dunk thing, I love that he threw a ball to Hopkins yesterday, and it's like the people in the broadcast booth, Tirico and Collinsworth, it's like that they are contractually obliged to always say that Mahomes never did anything wrong. When Mahomes took a hit, he was still inbounds, and they said, "Oh, and a late hit there," and it was like, no, he's just, I want to see a team actually. Are the St. Louis Cardinals supposed to be the Yankees of the National League? I mean, they are the Yankees of the National League in the sense they've won the most World Series. They also are the Yankees of the National League is that they're underachieving and pissing their fans off. So yes, they are very much that way. The Cardinals are doing things a little differently. Hopefully things turn around because this regime of the front office has not been doing well for them. The Cardinals thing always was they didn't sign stars. The Yankees are the team that signed stars. Now they actually are starting to grow some stars in-house. I mean, Aaron Judge is definitely a guy they grew in-house. But the Cardinals always had these players that came along that were, developed or acquired through some savvy acquisitions to them. They don't go out there and sign them. It is just so disheartening the number of guys who we look at when the prospects list come out, all of these guys for the St. Louis Cardinals that are supposed to be great, that they don't seem to really reach their full potential in St. Louis. And then they go to their next team and all of a sudden they're as great, if not better than they were ever supposed to be. I can't even go on to the list of them, but it's like, if you watch the postseason baseball, you could not have a meaningful moment or a meaningful game without a former St. Louis Cardinal somehow factoring into it. It just seemed like that's just the perception I have. Let's see if Jordan Walker ever reaches his full potential, because I always thought that guy looked like an MVP in the making. And so far, there hasn't been, but this is what I like the Cardinals are going to do. I think that now that there is not the pressure to win from the fans, I think we've kind of accepted the fate a little bit. Let the kids play, see who is going to be a part of the next winning team, the next winning group. Because this last group, that's why I don't really pay too much attention to the offseason news in baseball anymore. I just always use the comparison. My buddy in St. Louis, I love the guy to death. When they got Goldie and when they got Arenado, I just make the comparison to the movie Major League 2. We were sitting there saying, this is the move that pushes us over the top. That was our Jack Parkman going all the way. And they didn't even win a fucking playoff series with those guys. Or maybe they won one with Goldie. It's just hard to remember to a certain extent. Yeah, 2019. That was all the years just start blending in. I was drinking really heavily during a lot of those years, so I start mixing some of them up. And I don't really like to think back too deeply on seasons we did not win. Yes, granted, I can tell you an awful lot about the 2013 season because they lost the World Series to the fucking Red Sox, which the fact that the Cardinals have, one thing I will say the Cardinals have in common with the Yankees is that we both hate the Red Sox that much. Red Sox beat the Cardinals in 2 World Series. I will also throw in, though, that the Cardinals have played the Yankees in the World Series 5 times. And they have a 3-2 record. But you know why I don't gloat about that too much? Because it all happened way before I was born. So when the Yankees fans, they have to tell me about the 27 rings. If you wanted to talk about how many they've won in your lifetime, that would be fine, because guess what? It's more than the Cardinals have won. But when I start hearing the 27 ring shit, exactly that's what it is. It's shit. But moving along to the NFL right now, again, I have been someone who has been very negative about what I watch. The football is still good when we have good quarterbacks. Yesterday, the game between the Rams and, I mean, the Bills have been involved in some amazing games. Yesterday's game between the Rams and the Bills was one of the most entertaining games I remember watching all season. Why? Because we had good quarterbacks. Yes, no, the BJ, thank you very much. The Cardinals do have an amazing franchise, and it's I mean, they have an amazing ballpark too. And again, they're in the Midwest, it's a little, kind of a small town, I mean, in the relative scale of things. They make life interesting, you know. And I mean, I know that I don't have any negative feelings towards the Mets. I like that they're a worthy adversary, you know, in my backyard kind of thing, you know, where I grew up around Mets fans. I think that Mets fans have a bigger problem with Cardinals fans. I don't really think the Cardinals have any problems with the Mets. It's kind of the, you know, they did beat the Cardinals in 2000. That was the Rick Ankiel year where he just forgot how to be able to throw a baseball straight. And that led to a Subway Series. Other than that, I don't really, well, again, I will say that I was at an amazing baseball game in 2022 when it was just I was with one of my best friends who's a Mets fan. And, you know, we went there kind of having he was talking shit to me the entire time when I was just kind of like, hey, I just want to watch a good game. And I will just infamously said that, you know, like I really enjoyed the vibe of Citi Field way more than Yankee Stadium, by the way. And Pete Alonso, his walk-up music, I like Pete Alonso, even though the whole thing that happened between the Cardinals and the Mets, I just like the guy. He's, you know, I mean, he's kind of a bit of a weird. I don't necessarily he's the greatest hang, or he kind of acts a little toolish. You know, the way he does the breathing exercises during the home run derby and everything. But he's a fucking masher. It's just what he is. I mean, you know, last year he had a down year, and it came at the expense of my fantasy baseball season. But anyways, the point of the story was that when Alonso was coming up to bats at Citi Field, he played "Working Man" by Rush, which was a song that just really, really hit well in a stadium. And I just kind of felt like fit him very well. And just the vibe in the stadium, I was saying really good. I'm going, wow, it must be something when he hits a home run in this place. And then Pete Alonso cracked a home run off of Giovanni Gallegos that still hasn't fucking landed in the top deck at Citi Field. I know that was a little bit of a contradictory statement saying it hasn't landed, but it was in the top deck at Citi Field. But it was one of those things where as soon as it cracked off the bat, I knew it was out of there. I don't even think I saw where it landed. I think I just yelled fuck as loud as I could and turned around. But yeah, no, other than that, I have nothing against the Mets. Cardinals fans are the nicest fans. I mean, yeah, I mean, it was a kind of a point of contention amongst baseball fans this year. I mean, I even wasn't necessarily totally on board with it, but, you know, I'm just some asshole that lives in upstate New York. But the Cardinals even cheered Paul Skeens, who was dominating them for like 6 innings this year. They gave a standing ovation to an opposing player. Famously did not boo Tino Martinez when he came there. They've lost a little bit of the nicest, though. We definitely started, and I can say we because I was there when they lost that series to the White Sox in St. Louis. I was actually in the stadium, and if you had $1 for every time I've said this on this podcast and you've listened to it, well, I'm not going to send you that $1, but you'd be able to buy some good drugs probably with at least the number of times I mentioned it. Probably mention it like every episode over the summer because that's how bad it was. But we're starting to get a little bit buoy. We're starting to get a little bit, you know, ahead of ourselves a little bit. But I just, again, I'm not somebody that sports just don't matter to me the way that they used to. And this is not just a me getting older thing. I was actually talking to my uncle Lance, who was was like just an absolute, like literally in 2004, when the Red Sox lost or beat came back to win the Yankees, a lifelong friend of his painted a bee on his front lawn. I still don't know if they even talked to each other over that. But as he said to me when they lost the World Series, he was like, Rye, he was like, you know, when I was your age, he's like, I still wouldn't be over that. He was like, I was over that World Series loss like the next day. I've kind of accelerated in age. We're at 39 years old. Again, I just try to root for the Cardinals for good reasons, not for the bad reasons. Again, and the Cardinals, them sucking so bad in that series, motivated me to have one of the best summers of my life because rather than sitting around complaining about the Cardinals, I decided to just travel around to different ballparks and see different teams play and, you know, really just love baseball. It would be nice if the Cardinals happen to be better while I love baseball. BJ, thanks for the subscribe. Appreciate that. Tell a friend, all that good stuff. And if you ever want to come on sometime and chat some Mets stuff, or Kyle, same thing. You know, I'm sure if you're a guy from Long Island, you ain't scared to talk and speak your mind. I'm always willing to have some people on the show to just, you know, maybe just even for a quick little moment there. Anyways, we'll get back on point now. We're actually going to talk the football that I was saying there. That was just exciting football. As you know, it just kind of proves thing. And I made the mistake of doing this. I was feeling a little giddy after the great 1:00 slate that I had, which me and my buddy from St. Louis, we did kind of make one little crazy observation. It does seem that the 1 to 6 point thing, and I did run the numbers on this. For some reason, 1:00 games are more likely to finish at 1 to 6 points than the 4:00 games. Again, I try to make things as simple as possible. I could just chalk that up to randomness because I'm trying to, I did try to get a little cute with, who to bet, when to bet the 1 to 6 point thing. And I just found that it was just a good way to turn a good wager into a bad wager or find ways to not make money that should be available to me. But those 4:00 games, maybe it's because of the teams that typically play in that 4:00 window. Who knows? Maybe it's, if you're one of those guys who think that, the NFL is all contrived and rigged and everything like that, maybe they just make the 1:00 games more interesting so you can't decide how much you're going to bet on the 4:00 games or some type of weird bullshit like that. But yeah, I don't know where I was going with that one yet. We'll go back to that. I did want to at least just kind of address that there, we have kind of, the cream is rising to the top throughout this season. Now, even though I say that the bottom competition is playing a little better, they're still not good enough to win games. But we are in this weird predicament now where there is no clear-cut favorites. As far as I do think there's a big flaw with every possible team that is competing on there. So I'm just going to kind of go run through the real haves and have-nots in the NFL and why they can win or why they won't win type thing. So we'll start in the NFC. I'm going to start in the NFC West. It looks like that this is Seattle is probably going to emerge as the division winner on there. There's an off chance the Rams can catch them. The Cardinals are dead as a doornail. I will tell you this. I'm done. I said this when I had I think when I had Big Tone on the show here. Maybe it was Big Tone, maybe it was somebody else. I'm done betting any games that involve Kyler Murray because you never know what you're going to get with that guy, but mostly it's just not good. If you bet on Kyler Murray, he's going to do what he did yesterday. If you bet against Kyler Murray, you're going to get that play against the Raiders where he scrambles around for 20 seconds and breaks your fucking heart. It's just, there's easier ways to go about wagering money. The only wagers they get from me is the 1 to 6 thing, which by the way, Kyler Murray, if he didn't take a fucking 16-yard sack, maybe could have gotten us to where they narrowed that gap down to 6 points and I would have cashed a ticket on that one. But such is life. That's what happens when you bet the way that I do. But it looks like that one's going to be between the Rams and the Seahawks. The Seahawks is that, the right way to go about this is that if Geno Smith plays well, which again is a very, very loaded statement because, asking Geno Smith to play well would mean that he wouldn't always be Geno Smith. But I would say that they're not a team that you necessarily want to play. I don't think Seattle has any chance of winning the Super Bowl. But can they upset somebody in the playoffs? Absolutely, with the firepower they have on offense, for sure. And I mean, if they can catch lightning in a bottle, I mean, they've got 3 great receivers on that team. Jackson Smith and Jigba has really emerged as this, big possession guy. I mean, yeah, he gets targeted a lot, but he also catches the ball a lot. And the DK Metcalf is one of those kind of game breaker types. Their offensive line leaves some to be desired, and I'm not really sure how good they are on defense, but, that's just my take on Seattle. The Rams, same thing. I don't think the Rams can win the Super Bowl. But I think that every team in the NFC does not want to have to see the Rams in one game because I do believe that Matthew Stafford, when he has those two, they're a very offensive-led team with an offensive-led coach. And you got to see the brilliance of Sean McVay, the way he was dialing up the plays he was dialing last night against the Bills. And I love this. Somebody that gets it. Sean McVay he went for it on 4th down twice because one of the dumbest fucking things you can possibly do, especially when Josh Allen is on the other side of you, is to kick a field goal to go up 6 when you were up 3. Anytime, I look at this on both sides of things. Anytime you do something and you're up or down by the same number of scores that you were before that play happens or that decision is made, it's never a good decision. And Sean McVay was rewarded for his guts, and the Rams got a good win and kept their season alive. Don't think that they can win it all. I think that they leave a little bit of desire. Now, if that team had Aaron Donald on it, that would be fucking something scary, I would say. But that's just, for another day. The NFC North teams, that's just the Detroit, I think, is the best team in the NFC because they have so much. I mean, They have yet to really have to ask Jared Goff to win for them. He is the reason why I think that they could lose. Now, they were a banged up defense against a desperate division opponent, and they still won that game. The coach quarterback combination is usually one of the best things to go on in football. It's not that I don't think Dan Campbell is a good coach. It's just that I think that he can potentially, he thinks with his balls a little more than his brain sometimes, and that can get you some places, but that can also get you in trouble. Depending on the way you want to interpret the end of that game, him going for it on fourth down, which I think almost nobody else does in the NFL, could have lost him the game. Jared Goff did have a bad snap and technically did take a knee, which, spirit of law versus letter of law. I think that it's okay that, we got the handoff off there. But if they get stuffed on that play, the reason that he went for it there is he was worried that Jordan Love was going to move it down the field on them. And I think that he did have a good pulse of his team where they had something dialed up that made the Packers start slow in that game. But then once they got through there, that offensive pass interference call could have been the difference in that game for sure. Now, we're going to move on to the Packers on this one. The Packers are a team that seem to start slow in all of their big games. That's been a consistent thing amongst them. I don't know if it's because Jordan Love needs to feel out the opposing side. I don't know if they're ill-prepared. They seem to be they always seem to narrow the gap as the game goes on. But I feel like that is a big Achilles heel. I think that you can get out ahead of the Packers and then make it very difficult for them to come back. I think that the Packers are better suited to be handing the ball off to Josh Jacobs than they are asking Jordan Love to spread the field and air it out. But again, I have this power in the universe because just when I said that Jordan Love just gives me a black Andy Dalton vibes, and I don't mean that they're the same type of player, but I think that level of performance to be expected. Jordan Love started dealing it around last game, but ultimately, I just don't think he is quite that guy. I think he's an above-average quarterback, but not much else, and that's my hesitation on there. Same thing I feel with the Vikings. There is this really interesting split of Sam Darnold at home versus Sam Darnold on the road. Personally, he played an amazing game, and you have to do what you do against the competition you play yesterday. I don't think the Falcons are very good. That's just where I go. So I think that we're going to, don't get too excited about that major victory over the Falcons. I think that one thing we've learned this year between Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins, maybe old guys coming off Achilles injuries aren't that good. Maybe it takes a little longer, or maybe they just never recover. That's kind of the read I have on those guys. My favorite thing I've done is I've still been trying to organize this episode, but amongst adults, it's always tough to coordinate things. We can't even hang out, but let alone even get a channel going on or get a conversation. I'd love to have my Philadelphia Eagles fans friends. Yes, I actually have Eagles fans as friends in my life. I'd love to have them on. Same reason with them. I think Saquon Barkley's amazing. The offensive line is amazing. A.J. Brown is one of the best wide receivers, and their defense is very, very legit. I don't trust the coach quarterback conversation or combination they have there. And to an extent, I have a whole chat through this. If any of my Eagles fans friends that are part of that chat are watching, read what you were saying during the first half of that Eagles game against the Panthers. Okay? That's all I got to tell you on that one. I can't trust, when Jalen Hurts is just basically a glorified Tyrod Taylor from when the Bills made their playoff run, I don't see that. I can't see Jalen Hurts if they get down in a playoff game, which again, their defense is well, but they were having, if they were not playing against the Panthers yesterday, if they were playing against an actual high-powered offense yesterday, they would have been in a lot of trouble because they can certainly control. If they get ahead in the game, they're very dangerous because of how effective they run the ball with Saquon Barkley and that offensive line. But Jalen Hurts, when you're throwing the ball 20 times a game, and I was watching, and I hate Manuel Acho, but he was showing some great game tape on there. Jalen Hurts is indecisive or is just not seeing times to throw the ball to A.J. Brown. And A.J. Brown, if he's catching the ball at the second level, that's a fucking tough motherfucker to tackle. When Jalen Hurts does have good offensive games, it's usually a lot of yards after catch because a guy like A.J. Brown is the playmaker that he is. That's why I have a problem with the Eagles there. The Commanders, I'll be shocked if the Commanders win a game the rest of the year. Again, I said this before and I'll say it again. Again, I think they do have some favorable matchups. They play the Saints, but Cliff Kingsbury's second half of the season offense is college or pros, and Jaden Daniels hitting the rookie wall, I think is a real thing. Let's move it to the AFC. The Bills, that was just the perfect storm of things I think took for the Bills. The Bills lost that game by 2 points. Sean McDermott, that was just completely inexcusable for them to run the QB sneak and call the timeout, which effectively made it impossible for them to win that game. Because honestly, I think that if they did, I don't want to say that one costed them, because realistically, were they going to stop the Rams? I mean, the Rams, I think the Rams would have gone for it on fourth down, depending on where they were in the field, because the Bills wouldn't have had any timeouts. I think that we got that to that level of Josh Allen yesterday, where Belichick was with Peyton Manning when he started going for two before it was cool. Again, if you remember way back in, like, I don't even know the year at this point anymore, but there was the Sunday Night Football game where Bill Belichick on 4th and 2 went for it on his own side of the field against the Colts. And the logic being is that what's the point of me punting it to Peyton Manning when he's just going to end up right back where we were in 3 plays? That's kind of the way it would go. I think that McVay probably, if it was a 4th and 3 or so, I think he probably would have went for it to try and close out that game rather than asking his defense to stop the Bills. But quarterback sneak, I mean, when you have ball at the 1 yard line, I get it that, Josh Allen's an effective runner there, but I mean, come on, you can at least do a rollout of some form we can run in, or just anything, just dead it a play real quickly. Didn't give your team the best chance to win there. That was the kind of the perfect storm. The way the Bills kind of run their defense is that they let teams run the ball on them, which makes for longer drives. Longer drives, more plays means more likely that something bad is going to happen. You're always a holding penalty away from derailing a drive. When they mash it down your throat like that one, because Bills they kind of play the bend but don't break defense, it seems like. And then if they can get ahead on you, then they turn you into a throwing team, and that's when they can, dial up some decent pressure here and there, although it was kind of non-existent for the most part yesterday against an old Matthew Stafford. But when you have 2 receivers the caliber the Rams do, it's really, really tough to blitz them, and especially Puka Nacua. Side rant on Puka Nacua. That guy is one of the best receivers in the NFL, and this is why I hate all of the pre-draft coverage that we get, because I'll be the first to admit I didn't really know of Puka Nacua when he was in college. When he had his amazing week 1 game last year and he became the fantasy football back when I was still a loser and played fantasy football. Yes, I call people that played fantasy football losers. That's a whole different side conversation. Could probably be its own episode. But everyone went to grab him and going, oh, there's always that guy that has the big week 1, and then it turns out to be nothing. No, Puka Nacua is that good. And then the first thing I asked myself was, how did this guy fall this far in the draft? I watched his highlight reels in college, and I watched him making all the same plays he makes in the NFL. But apparently because he didn't measure that well at the combine, he just fell there. And I'm just like, I'd rather watch what these guys can do on the field than what they measure out to do in gym shorts. And Puka Nacua joins that list of guys like Dwight Freeney and Terrell Suggs. I mean, Terrell Suggs and Dwight Freeney were still first-round draft picks. But the fact that they're going to be Hall of Famers, both of them, yes, I think both of them are Hall of Fame players. They should have been like top 5 picks, and they fell to the teens, all because their arms are a little short. They're going to have problem creating separation, or they're just fucking great football players. And that's my Puka Nacua rant. That's going to be, let's see, the only other teams. I mean, again, I really think we have to consider the Steelers over the Ravens as a team to beat there. And little side thing again, too, is that, the coach of the year in the NFL is definitely a very exciting race because it's between Dan Campbell and Mike Tomlin at this point. And you know what those 2 teams have in common, or those 2 guys have in common? They are true football coaches. They both played football at a high level, and they just remind you of a football coach, I would say. And, I think that that's got to matter for something, given the way they're going. I mean, the Steelers just have this mold, and it seems like the Lions have this mold. Like when I posted a TikTok, which was, saying that it didn't make any sense to me, the Lions were 3.5-point favorites at home when they were 3-point favorites in Lambeau in a game that they won convincingly. And everyone pointed out the injuries to the Lions defense. And yes, their best players being out. I mean, obviously that's always a big thing. I thought that was still an overreaction on the line. Turned out to be not as big of a deal because the Packers did cover the 3.5. I, being a smart better, got the 1-6 that I did on the Lions, and then also bet the Lions at -3, which meant it was just a push. But hey, maybe the next guys up on those teams are also pretty good. I mean, losing your starters is different depending on your backups. And the fact that the Steelers just always seem to just churn out these wide receivers or these different defensive players that just, it's just like they just go one after the other. And it's like they never skip a beat on there. And I feel like the Tomlin being there as long as he has, they've just built the culture in Pittsburgh. Again, the Steelers are kind of that team in like the way I described the Seahawks a little bit, or the Seahawks and the Rams, is that, do I think that they can win it all? Not necessarily, but I do think they could beat any team on any given day. The Ravens, I just think that we've seen that, when they get to the point where you make Lamar beat you with his arm, yes, he's looked very good against some lesser teams. Also, I want to go back to the NFC on that one. Tampa Bay fits that billing of that. I don't think the Tampa Bay Bucks are going to win the Super Bowl, but I think they can upset just about anybody because Baker Mayfield is, I hate talking like, trendy and stuff like that. Baker Mayfield's a dog. and they've got some good talent on offense, and they can make things interesting. I mean, again, look at who the Bucks, their losses this year are and how much they were by. They were in it against all of the best teams they played. They haven't really been blown out by anybody, I don't think. And I'm sure that somebody can tell me that I'm wrong. But hey, if somebody tells you that I'm wrong, that means that they're liking, comment, subscribing, and watching, which is all that I'm trying to do on this one. The Chiefs, I'm going to go broke. I mean, actually, no, here's the funny thing. If you're betting the opponents getting the points against the Chiefs, you're making a lot of money because the Chiefs aren't covering shit for spreads. When I inevitably am betting the Chiefs to lose games, though, I'm taking the money lines against them. That's where I'm going to be giving some money back on there. I'm still not impressed by it. I mean, they make it seem like that the offense, I think that it's mostly Andy Reid driven more than it is Patrick Mahomes driven. Yes, he does his scrambling around. I think that Patrick Mahomes I think that it's a mental thing. It's like the Tiger Woods thing. When Tiger is making his charge on Sunday, everybody kind of their asshole puckers up. I think that Mahomes down in close, tight games, he does make teams play a little bit worse than they actually are. He did have the big scramble to kind of extend the game there. They do draw the penalty and all that good stuff. But ultimately, the Chiefs just can't keep fucking winning. It's just like, I feel like that fucking Jesse Pinkman talking about Walter White. He can't keep getting away with it. They can't keep getting away with it, but they are. That's what's happening. I have a bet on the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl, and that's to cover the money I'm going to lose betting against them in the playoffs. I think there's a double-digit loss. BJ Santana, they're the model-day New England Patriots. They're doing the same things the Patriots did. They're doing it in different ways. The thing is that I used to bet on the Patriots, and I didn't mind the Patriots. Maybe because I lived in Western New York, and I was tired of listening to the loser Bills fans at the time, because that's what they were. They were loser Bills fans at the time because the Bills weren't winning, but they always thought they were just this close away from winning. The difference between the Bills winning and losing was Josh Allen. That's not a very, very small difference. That's a very, very big difference. And I just, I always like to be in the minority of things. Whenever everyone likes one thing, I'm definitely going to like the other. Maybe it's a faulty wiring I have. But I'll just be shocked if this Chiefs team wins a Super Bowl because they make every game. I mean, the Chargers, God, it would be interesting to see if they had some receivers on the outside right there. It's Justin Herbert's, again, classic example of that. Who is this guy? First half, Justin Herbert, and second half, Justin Herbert's. I mean, they were just so Jekyll and Hyde on there. And then when they needed him to come through in the clutch, he just couldn't fucking do it. They had to kick a field goal. I'll still just say you're never going to beat the Chiefs by kicking field goals. That's, you have to score touchdowns, which is why the Bills showed some balls, did the right thing in their game against the Chiefs. Rather than kicking a field goal, which would have put them up, they were up one score, kicking a field goal would have put them up one score. They run the play. Josh Allen has his MVP moment, and that was that. But the beautiful part is that, I don't know what it is that there's no style points in me picking a winner right now. Let me just pick things as the bracket go on, because if I'm just taking a leap of faith on there, if I say I think I have one particular team I think is going to win the Super Bowl. I was asked by my Eagles friends chat who I think is my pick is win the Super Bowl is. I just said I hope it's not the Chiefs. And that's what I'm going to end on. I just hope it's not the Chiefs. Everybody, thank you for sticking this one out. We had some consistent viewership throughout this one. I might have gained a couple subscribers. Thanks for the engagement. And like, subscribe, comment, share. Like I said, when 2025 starts, that just sounded weird in my head, even saying that that's going to be coming up in just a few weeks. I'm going to try and have a more routine schedule. I have this episode up for the sports-minded things. There's more to sports than me in the Scho-Zone. I'm going to have some other life things coming up on there. I have some exciting guests lined up this week, and when those episodes get released, I do not know. I'm going to have a very interesting ventriloquist on, and that's going to be more of a life conversation thing. And then I'm also going to have my buddy Mike on for a sports conversation thing. We'll release those as we go. I'll probably be recording something later on today to kind of just keep releasing that content out there. So if you watch this, thank you from whatever. I did put this on my Facebook channel for the first time, just to bother people in my life, maybe lose a couple Facebook friends. If you've been, who cares about that one, actually? Anyways, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for the Scho-Zone. I need to take a breath, drink some water before I get ready to record again. So thank you very much for tuning in and listening. All right, real quick, the same game parlay for tonight is Cooper Rush over passing yards, CeeDee Lamb over receiving yards, Chase Brown over rushing yards, and Jamar Chase over receiving yards.